Hello everyone, my name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is yet another case that you guys suggested to me that just absolutely broke my heart. Another case of a beautiful young woman, absolutely full of life, being taken from the world way too soon because of a disgusting, depraved predator. As always, I won't stand for any negative comments about the victim. If you stick around to the end of the video, we are going to be talking about lessons that we can get from this case and how to protect yourself and your friends. I know in the last video that I made, similar to this one where I said no negative comments about the victim, I got a lot of comments saying like, oh, we can't talk about what we can learn from this or what mistakes she made. Like, obviously, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying no negative comments about the victim. I don't think that that's too hard of a statement to understand. And if that really doesn't make sense to you, then just don't comment. Sorry if that's a little bit harsh, but I really don't want any negative comments towards the victim in this video or any video. But before we get into the video, I wanted to go ahead and say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Native. Those of you who regularly watch this channel know that I am a huge fan of Native. I've been using their products literally every single day for years now. Native deodorant is a vegan, cruelty-free deodorant that's paraben-free, aluminum-free, with natural ingredients like coconut oil and shea butter. It has an amazing, smooth, non-sticky formula that dries very quickly and lasts all day. As a lot of you guys know, because I'm pretty much always talking about it, I work in healthcare, and even after my long 11 or 12-hour days, when I come home and work out or run with my dog, Native deodorant is still working hard and making me smell just as fresh as when I put it on in the morning. But one of the biggest things to me that makes Native unique is their huge variety of scents. They have almost every scent that you could want or think of, as well as limited time festive scents that you can try out as well. First, I have one of my staples, coconut and vanilla. This one is one of my favorite scents that they have. It just smells so sweet, but not too sweet, while also taking me back to the beach and summertime and all of those amazing things. Next, I have cherry and vanilla macaroon. When I ordered this scent, I had no idea what to expect, but honestly, it smells amazing. To me, it smells sweet and sugary, and it feels like the perfect scent to wear on a date or maybe a wine night with the girls. I don't know why, that's just the first thing that comes to my mind when I smell this, but I love this scent. Last, I have Earl Grey and Mulberry. This one just smells so fresh and clean. I think this is the perfect scent for just going out to the gym or going to work or whenever you want to smell like you just stepped out of the shower. But deodorant isn't the only thing that I love from Native. I also love Native's other personal care products. I have their body wash as well as their toothpaste, and ever since I started using them, they're literally all I use. Their body wash smells amazing and it just makes me feel so fresh and clean, and it's not sticky, it's so smooth, and I just love the way it feels. And if you're someone who's interested in more sustainable packaging, Native also offers a plastic-free version of their deodorants with the same amazing formula. Native products are so cute, and they make the perfect stocking fillers for those of you who like to get your shopping done early. Now, 3 deodorants normally go for $36, but if you click the link down below and use code RachelShannonCases, you can get a pack of 3 for $24, which is 33% off and such a great deal. You can also get 20% off of any body wash or toothpaste if you use my code RachelShannonCases. As always, I'm so excited about this deal for you guys. You guys know how much I love Native and all of their products. Thank you again so much to Native for sponsoring today's video. So with all of that being said, let's get into today's case. Today, we are going to be discussing the solved case of India Chipchase. India Eve Chipchase was born December 24th, 1995 in Northampton, England to parents Suzanne Pointer and Jeremy Chipchase, and she had 3 younger siblings, Harry, Pia, and Lulu. India was absolutely beautiful both on the inside and out. She was described by family as having a kind, loving heart. India actually loved having her birthday on Christmas Eve because she just loved Christmas and everything about that time of year. It was a special time of year for everyone, and the family loved celebrating both her birthday and Christmas together. She attended school at Pittsford School, an independent, small, private school in Northamptonshire, before she went on to Northampton College, where she earned a diploma in health and social care. Her professors and peers alike described her as being very hardworking hardworking, popular, sweet, and so caring. For quite some time, though, she didn't really know what she wanted to do as a career, but shortly before her death, she had actually decided that she wanted to be a paramedic, and her parents were so proud of this decision. They knew that she would go on to make an amazing paramedic. She cared so deeply for others and was just a very vibrant and energetic person. Her mother said that the house was always so full of noise and chaos when she was in the house. So she had the perfect amount of energy and compassion to bring to that profession. But unfortunately, she never got the chance to be a paramedic, and now that she's gone, the house is quiet. For the time being, India worked as a barmaid, or a bartender as we say in the US, at the Calling Tree pub in East Hunsbury, and she had just recently started dating her boyfriend Grant Hare, who she had only been with for 3 weeks. It's a little bit confusing because a lot of articles will say that she was actually dating a well-known New Zealand rugby player, Ivan Rehana. The two were high school sweethearts, but they had not been dating at the time of her death. I'm not sure why they broke up or when, but it seemed like he still had a lot of love for her. He posted tributes to her on social media and said that he was dedicating his career to her. He said that she was now his motivation for bettering himself and excelling in his sport. So even though the two hadn't been together at the time, things between them seemed pretty amicable, and he still cared about her a lot. Now, on January 29th, 2016, India had decided to go out with some friends for some drinks, as she always did. At around 11:30, she arrived at the NB's Cocktail Bar and Club on Bridge Street. As so many young people her age do, her and her friends were drinking, and they kept drinking, and they did get pretty intoxicated. That night, she had chugged 6 Jaeger bombs, so she was pretty lit that night. Well, somehow, by 12:45 a.m. on January 30th, she got separated from her friends among the crowds in the bar, so she ended up going outside of the club trying to find her friends. Then, at the same time, her friends were still inside the club trying to find her, but after a certain point of looking around for her, they just assumed that she went home without them. India tried getting back into the club, but at that point, she was so intoxicated that they wouldn't let her back in. So by 12:58 a.m., she was standing outside of the bar and was stumbling around pretty badly, so she went up to the doorman, Dave Burry, and said to him, "I just want to go home." So he escorted her into a taxi and she got in, but apparently the taxi driver had asked for the fare up front, and that made her really upset, so she decided to get out. By 1:08 a.m., she's back outside the bar, stumbling around pretty badly again. Dave walked back outside of the bar, and she went back over to him and basically fell on him and said once again that she just wants to go home. Dave went back inside to do his job and told his coworkers to keep an eye out for her. The next bit of this is captured on CCTV footage. So at that point, she sat down on the ground, started going on her phone, texting and calling her boyfriend. These were going unanswered because he was out with his friends that night, partying at different clubs, so he didn't hear his phone going off over the loud music. She was getting really upset and agitated, and she started crying on the phone. At this point, she is approached by a man who starts talking to her. Witnesses reported that they overheard him saying, "Don't worry, I'll get you home safe." No one knows what else was really said, but people around them thought that they knew each other because the way he was talking to her was to a point where they seemed friendly. They seemed like they recognized one another. Either way, after that, they can be seen continuing to talk until they stand up and start heading over to a taxi. As they're walking towards the taxi, he can be heard by a witness telling her to put her phone away for her safety. Once they got into the taxi, you can see the taxi drive off. The man tells the driver to bring them to a McDonald's. So he started driving towards a McDonald's on Bridge Street, but then the man told him to go to a different one. They then headed over to a nearby BP gas station, and he got out of the car for about 4 minutes. As India waited inside of the taxi, she tried calling her boyfriend again, but I think at this point his phone was dead, so none of her calls were being answered. Then they drove to the end of Stanley Road, and the taxi dropped them off there. At 1:40 a.m., a witness said that he saw her and the man walking towards a house on Stanley Road before going inside. Between 1:41 and 1:49 a.m., India sent out a series of Snapchats, one of which said, quote, Where are club? So clearly, just by that, you can tell she's pretty incoherent and isn't really able to form sentences the way that she normally would. By 3:03 a.m., Grant, her boyfriend, had gotten home and noticed that his phone had died, so he charged it, and he noticed that India had been trying to get a hold of him all night. So he tried calling her back 3 times, but all of his calls were going unanswered. At this point, it's pretty reasonable to assume that maybe she just made it home and fell asleep. However, after this, India Chipchase had never been seen alive ever again. By 4 p.m. that same day, January 30th, India was scheduled to work her bartending job, but she didn't show up. Her parents knew that it was not normal for India to just no-call, no-show like that, so they immediately reported her missing. Immediately, police did suspect foul play, but they didn't necessarily see her as a high-risk missing person at first. But nonetheless, police and the family alike took to social media to post her picture and to see if anybody knew where she could be. Her mom posted to Facebook, quote, "India Eve Chipchase, please let me know that you're okay. Please, darling, I love you." However, after following up on the timeline and searching through CCTV footage, police saw the man who approached her, and they were immediately concerned. One of the police officers actually recognized him, and it wasn't long before they identified him as 52-year-old Edward Tenniswood. Those around Edward described him as a bit of an oddball who didn't really have any friends, and he was quite the loner. He had never been married or had any kids, and he had been living in this rental house for 5 years, and he worked as a bookkeeper. He mostly kept to himself, but his neighbor actually reported that one day him and Edward had gotten into a physical altercation because he wouldn't go out with Edward for a drink. So it seemed like maybe he tried to make friends but just didn't go about it in a very socially appropriate way. So overall, he was just a really weird guy, and we'll get more into him in just a few minutes. Police were pretty quickly able to track India's location using her cell phone and found out that she was, in fact, at the home of Edward Tenniswood. So by 3:45 p.m. the next day, on January 31st, 2016, police broke down his door forcibly and entered his home at 6 Stanley Road. Police then went on to describe the scene that they walked into after they entered his home. PC Stephen Knight said that as soon as they entered the doorway of the home, he could see a mattress on the floor with a duvet covered pulled to the top, and under the blanket he could see the shape of a human figure. He could also see black hair sticking out of the top of the blanket at the top of the mattress. It was pulled out around her head, sort of like a halo. On police cam footage, one officer can be heard saying, "Sweetheart, can you wake up? Can you hear me?" And another officer can be heard saying, "She's gone. Shit, she's gone." They then found the fully clothed body of 20-year-old India Chipchase, but Edward Tenniswood was not in the home. By 6:47 p.m. that same day, police figured out that Edward had been at the Ibis Hotel in Mayfair, Northampton. He had actually checked into the hotel at 4 p.m. on January 30th and then stayed overnight there. When police arrived at the hotel, they saw Edward sitting in the lounge, watching TV and drinking a beer. All night, he had been using the computer at the hotel, looking up news stories and following the searches related to her. When police approached him, he acted in a very matter-of-fact way. Edward said, "I suppose you've been to the house. You found what you're looking for." And said, "I'm surprised you were so quick. You didn't take long to find me." Of course, he was immediately arrested on the suspicion of murder. So now let's go back into what else was found in Edward Tenniswood's house. He actually has diagnosed OCD, and he kept his house in a very interesting way. He had cling wrap around everything in his house, including bookshelves, his desk, computer, and tables. Even his furniture was covered in plastic wrap, and he had newspapers scattered all across the floor. His kitchen was organized with plates and bowls stacked all along the counters. Investigators also found India's cell phone in a box under the stairs, and her shoes and purse were stacked neatly in the next bedroom. They also found her blood in the downstairs lounge near a bottle of alcohol. They also found a bunch of cutout photos of different women in his kitchen. One of these photos was of a former model named Heather Stewart White. All of these different photos he claimed were of women that he had dated in the past, but of course, Heather Stewart White has flatly denied the claim that she had ever dated him. She was actually really upset that he said that. She said that she's never even met him and she has no idea where this came from, and asked for privacy from basically everybody so that she can deal with what was said about her. She also gave her condolences to India's family. I've seen a lot of articles that clearly he had an obsession with this model, and she does look a little bit similar to India, so it's thought that maybe he targeted India because she looked like this model. It's also possible that he targeted her because she was drunk and beautiful, so take with that what you will. So the next few minutes of this video, and honestly, pretty much the rest of this video, is very uncomfortable. I'm going to go into the details of Edward's account of that night and what he describes happened. It's really, really horrifying to listen to. It's really uncomfortable, and reading it made me really upset. Just knowing what really happened, and you can make inferences at this point about what really happened, it's just really upsetting to see what he says happened, and you know they're lies, and it's just really annoying and disturbing to listen to, so that's your warning now. When police asked Edward what happened the night that India died, he said that he approached India on the side of the club and that she looked up at him, smiled at him, and that the two had this instant connection. He put his arm around her and they started talking, and he assured her that he was gonna put her in a taxi and get her home safely. When they were in the taxi, he gave the driver an address to a location nearby so that the driver wouldn't know exactly where he lived. Once they got into his home, he claimed that they had a few drinks, chatted, and joked around together. At some point in the night, he said that she had tried to sit down on the couch and that she fell and hit her head by accident, but she laughed it off and the two went on with their night. After this, he said that India initiated him and came on to him. After this, he claimed that the two engaged in a consensual sexual relationship. He said that the two were vigorously making love when she grabbed his hands to put them around her neck, so he did. But it was to the point that she accidentally died because he squeezed just a little bit too tightly. He described that he put pressure on her neck for about 10 seconds and then her body suddenly spasmed and she let out an extraordinary exhale. Then apparently Edward had blacked out himself and just laid next to her body all night, apparently unaware that she had just died. He said that the next morning, when he woke up and she still wasn't waking up, he assumed that she was in some sort of diabetic coma or that she had suffered a stroke, and he said that he was trying to get her to wake up, but she obviously wasn't, and he said that she just didn't look right, so he just tried nudging her shoulder. When he realized that she was in fact unconscious and not just asleep, he said that he didn't want to check her pulse. Instead, he decided to down a glass of wine. He said that the reason he didn't check her pulse was because he knew that it would upset him even more to actually confirm that she was dead. So he didn't check, and instead he went into panic mode. He said that he redressed her body to be respectful and then changed his mattress, which had blood on it from the head injury that she had accidentally sustained. He then said that he needed to leave the apartment to go get some air, get some food, and to calm himself down. He said that he was fully convinced that she was going to regain consciousness while he was out. So he went ahead and got something to eat. He grabbed a kebab. He said that he was so upset that something so glorious turned into something so awful. He said that he was really anxious about the entire thing, so he thought that maybe a drink would make him feel better. So that's why he went over to the hotel to relax and have a drink. When he was asked by police why he said, "I'm surprised you were so quick," he said to police, quote, "My optimism is unbelievable. I'm just one of the world's greatest optimists. That allowed me to continually believe that India wasn't dead." He said that he was hoping police would go to his house and then find him and ask him, "Do you know where India Chipchase is?" He said that he was hoping that she somehow got out of the home and was rescued or something. But obviously, none of that is what actually happened. Police knew that she was murdered and that he brought her to his house with the sole intent of sexually abusing her and killing her. So his trial for murder started in July of 2016. Her parents themselves actually didn't attend the trial because they just couldn't bear to sit through it, and listened to everything that this monster had to say about what happened to their daughter. They couldn't listen to all the evidence that they found. She did have other family members there, and the parents did make a statement to the court, but otherwise they just couldn't sit through it. Of course, the defense said that this was all an accident, and he continued to describe the night in the same way that I just described. In fact, he got excited to talk about it, and even though the judge asked him repeatedly to keep his sentences short, he refused and continued to just go into great inappropriate detail about what happened. He even asked if he could bring a dummy into court to try and demonstrate the point that he was trying to make. He spoke about India as if he had known her for years and just spoke about this entire thing as if he was telling a story rather than recounting the death of a young woman. It got so bad that the jurors were actually asked to leave the courtroom because India's family was getting very visibly upset just listening to this disgusting and graphic testimony. Edward was very argumentative and kept becoming very angry with the judge. He just kept rambling off and going off onto different tangents. When he was questioned upon cross-examination, he was asked, "So you have a 20-year-old drunk girl in the taxi. What are you gonna do when you get back to your house?" He replied by saying, "I haven't thought forensically about what I was going to do. I just wanted to go home, get a drink. She was a drinking companion." Then the prosecution talked about all the evidence that they had that points to what really happened. So first, let's talk about her autopsy. India's cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head as well as pressure to her neck. A forensic pathologist, Dr. Briggs, testified that the pressure would have been enough to impede the blood flow to the brain. He said that loss of consciousness can happen within only a few seconds if blood and oxygen are not quickly restored. He said that if CPR is not administered after they lose consciousness, it is very likely that they will die. She had bruising to her forehead and her cheek, cuts on the inside and outsides of her cheeks and lips, and bruising on her tongue that corresponded to those cuts, and then she had a cut to the top of her right ear, and then bruising and scratching to her neck. The pathologist said that these are typical of an inflictive injury and not consistent with a self-inflicted or accidental injury. They said that they found additional blunt force injuries to both hips and all four extremities, which is further evidence of inflictive injuries. There was also over 10 bruises and way more cuts on her neck, with 4 corresponding internal bruising to the muscles in her neck. Edward's blood was also found underneath India's fingernails. He also reported that according to the toxicology report, India had 3 times the legal driving limit of alcohol at the time of her death. She had a blood level of 235 milligrams, and 80 is the legal limit. So she would have been in a state of mental confusion when he picked her up. Then the officer who found her body took the stand. He described what I said earlier about how he found her body. He said that when he saw her, she was covered in over 50 bruises. He said that he did see the abrasion to the top of her right ear with a bloodstain on the sheet that corresponded to the injury on her ear. The officer also said that when Edward was arrested, he had cuts on his neck and his forearms, which were consistent with fingernail scratches as well as having rug burn on his knee. So obviously, all of this points to a very vicious attack at the hands of Edward Tenniswood. Then the court also brought forward 2 other witnesses who have their own stories of suffering violence at the hands of Edward Tenniswood. So the first witness was a man who was his neighbor, who we discussed briefly earlier in the video. So he told the jury that Edward had told him that he had PTSD from being in the army, and he said that in the army he was trained to kill people with his bare hands. He then described a situation where Edward had walked into his house uninvited, so the neighbor pushed him back to make him leave, but Edward put his hands out to try and grab him and choke his neck. Another woman who testified in court talked about an incident that happened a few years ago about how the two had been arguing, and then Edward got really annoyed, so he ran at her and pushed her against the wall and then put his hands around her throat very tightly. He was holding her really tightly, and then he tried kissing her on the mouth as he was pushing her against the wall. She never reported this incident, pregnant, and she only came out with this information after finding out what happened to India. The other thing that I want to bring up in relation to Edward definitely being guilty of harming India with complete intent to harm her is the fact that Edward literally told the taxi driver a different address that wasn't his home because he didn't want the taxi driver to know his real address. That shows that he already knew what he was going to do to her. He approached her that night after recognizing how drunk and out of it she was. He saw an opportunity to harm a beautiful, young, vulnerable woman, and he took it. This shows that not only did he kill her on purpose, but that there was premeditation involved. So after 2 weeks of trial and an hour and 45 minutes of jury deliberation, they found him guilty of the rape and murder of India Chipchase. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 30 years before being considered for parole. The judge said, quote, "This was a terrible crime. It was committed because the defendant was determined to satisfy his own sexual desires on an attractive and much younger woman. It was a crime of utter depravity." Then, after being sentenced and going to prison, Edward complained to his legal team that he was not being treated right by the other inmates in prison. They allegedly had said that they were going to, quote, "get that sick bastards in the shower," and that others were threatening to kill him. His legal team said that he hasn't slept and that this level of threat against his life is very serious. They said that he's not the largest person and that he's very vulnerable. I haven't found if anything else was actually done about these threats, and maybe I'm a bad person, but I won't lie, it made me smile a little bit. I always say that I really hope that these disgusting predators are having a terrible time in prison, but Edward Tenniswood actually gave us the satisfaction of knowing that other inmates are doing their job and making his life miserable. I hope he's having a terrible time and that the other inmates aren't forgetting what he did. My heart breaks for her family and the life that she didn't get to live. She had so much going for her and she was just starting out in her life. She could have gone on to help so many people and save so many lives as a paramedic. Who knows what kind of amazing mark she could have left on this earth had a disgusting, selfish predator not taken her life away from her. Now, if you're a regular viewer of this channel and you watch most of my videos, you know that this case is very similar to another case that is very close to my heart, Grace Mullane. I feel like I didn't take enough time in that video to recognize the lessons that we can take from these cases. It's one of those things where we know that she's not responsible for her own death. Neither are her friends. I try to cover these types of cases because I feel like a lot of people cast judgment on the victims in these types of cases. People will go on in the comments or anywhere else to say that she shouldn't have gotten so drunk. She shouldn't have gone with a stranger. She shouldn't have been so naive. Her friends shouldn't have left her. They should have just looked for her until they found her. But I want you all to think about your past or maybe even your current self. I've had times where I get separated from my friends in a night out. Yes, we usually find our way back to one another, but one specific moment that I remember was when I was out with a friend and she was talking to a guy. I just sort of hung around while she talked to this guy and time passed and it was getting late and I really was getting tired and I really wanted to leave and I didn't know how much longer she was going to spend talking to this guy. I asked her if we can leave and she said that she didn't want to. I said, okay, I'm gonna go home then, or I can wait if she's not gonna be too much longer. But she said that she wanted to keep talking to this guy. She said that she was fine and we went on our separate ways. I look back and I realize just how dangerous of a situation that could have been for either of us. We didn't know this random guy that she was talking to and I was Ubering back home by myself. Now granted, I was not very intoxicated. I was in the right state of mind and so was she. But this could have ended up being a bad situation. And honestly, I don't have the answers for how I would have gone about that situation differently. There was nothing that I could have done to make her stop talking to this guy, and I don't think that I should have to sit there by myself being tired and not really wanting to be there anymore until she decides that she's done talking to this guy. So again, I don't really know what I should have done in that situation. So I think something to think about is to maybe come up with a plan before you go for a night out. Talk about your expectations for that night, what to do in certain situations. It might sound cheesy and unnecessary, but if I find myself in a situation where a friend is talking to a guy that we don't know, I can't do anything short of just grabbing her arm and yanking her out and making her come with, which I have done a few times to a couple of different friends. But if you talk about the situation beforehand and what you expect, if your friend really just wants to go with the guy, then you know that that's what she wants to do, and there's nothing that you can do to stop her. If she makes it clear that that's not what she wants and she somehow gets sucked into a situation and, is giving the eyes that she doesn't want to be there anymore, then that's your cue to jump in and take her away from the situation. I think if you talk about the night beforehand when everybody is in the right mind and thinking clearly, it can really be a smart idea. Even if things change in the moment, if I know that my friend really wasn't interested and now suddenly she finds someone who she thinks is really cool or whatever, I can at least say to her, like, hey, we talked about this before, like, are you changing your mind? Like, there's so many ways to go about it if you go into the night and into the situation with a mindset of the expectations. Another thing is something that I always say, but I also think that sharing your location with your friends on a night out is a great idea. Even if it's just for that night or for the 24-hour period, if you don't want them to have your location indefinitely, it can be a great idea to share locations so that if one of you gets lost, you can check where they are. You can see if they really did go home or if they're somewhere weird or if they're still in the bar. That's one thing that me and my friends have always done. We always let each other know when we're leaving and we always have each other's location on. So if we're worried, we can check. If I'm worried and I want to make sure my friend got home safe after leaving, I can check to make sure. If my friend says that she's going home early and then I see that she's at a random location or a random house that isn't hers, I would immediately know that something is wrong and I would start calling and texting her to see what's going on. Those are just a few examples, but I think that they can be really helpful. It isn't enough to just say, keep an eye out for one another, which is something that I always say and I do think it holds true, but it's not enough. Because I'm sure that that's what India's friends were trying to do. They looked for her. They did a lot of things right. They didn't just leave her behind and go on with their night willy-nilly. They wanted to find her. They wanted to make sure that she was safe, but that's just not what ended up happening because they were also intoxicated. They probably didn't think about the awful things that could have happened. Again, they just thought that she went home. And I'm sure that if this situation has happened before, where maybe she got a little bit too intoxicated and then ended up going home, if the same thing happens over and over and over again, it's just natural that the friends are going to say, hey, she always does this. She always goes home early, so that's what's happening this time. That's why I think it's a great idea to come up with a plan ahead of time, or even just establish, like, if you don't do it every night, because I know it's unreasonable. I know that every single night when you're coming over and you're hanging out with your friends and you don't want to sit down and be like, okay, this is what we're going to do if this awful things happen. Like, no one wants to talk about that. But as long as you come up with an understanding with your friends of what you want and what to do if so-and-so happens, or even just sharing your locations, I think that can be a great idea. Also, before I get these sort of comments, I am someone who does believe that women have every right to drink as much as they want, to wear whatever they want, but it's an unfortunate reality that we live in that we are much more vulnerable in that state. It's just a fact, and people can deny it all they want, but saying things like women should be able to do whatever they want and not fear for their lives, that's great, but that's not helpful. That's not going to stop the Edward Tenniswoods of the world. They don't care what you have to say. They don't care if they were raised right or if their parents told them not to rape. Like, just tell young boys not to rape. He doesn't care. I'm sure he's heard that. I'm sure he's heard multiple times that it's a bad thing to do, but he doesn't care. He's going to be a sick predator whether there's consequences or not. He does not care. The reason that I'm getting so worked up about this is because I hear so many times, it's parroted so many times, just teach young men to be better. I guarantee there's a lot of men out there who had decent parents, whose parents tried to raise them right, or even media or anything telling men don't do these awful things that still do it because they don't care. So as women, we need to make sure that we take the steps ourselves to keep ourselves safe. Yes, it's annoying. No, it shouldn't be our reality, but it is. And there's not much that we can do to change it except to protect our own selves, and don't rely on anybody else. Don't rely on police. Don't rely on people going on TV and being activists and all they have to say is, it shouldn't be like this. Rely on yourself. People aren't going to watch TV and activists who are angry and just decide, I think I'm gonna live my life better. I think I'm not gonna rape anyone. That doesn't happen. It might happen to a select few, but it doesn't happen. I'm sorry. It's a reality. Bad people are gonna be bad people, whether you tell them to be bad people or not. So again, ladies, men, everyone watching, take the steps to protect yourself. Yes, you have friends to rely on. Yes, keep an eye out for one another. Yes, do the things I talked about. But at the end of the day, you are your own best bet. You are the only one that can protect yourself. You are the only one that can make absolutely sure that you make it home at the end of the night, every night. Again, I want women and really everybody to have a full, fun life without worrying about any of the dangers in this world. But with the world that we live in, we can have fun and live a full, fun life while also taking the steps to protect ourselves and make sure that we make it home at the end of the night. So thank you so much for listening to India's story and for taking the steps to keep yourself and your friends safe. Think of it this way: you can trust yourself to do certain things right. You can trust yourself to protect your friends, but don't assume that you can trust everybody else. You should only rely on yourself. I care about each and every one of you. I don't want to keep reading these horrific stories. Don't let these dusty, nasty, crusty, creepy men keep taking advantage of us. Let them live their lonely, depraved lives by themselves that they deserve. Let them be miserable alone. Don't give them the chance to go to court and disrespect you by talking in graphic detail about lies of what you did with him. Don't give them that satisfaction, because I know that Edward Tenniswood was having the time of his life saying all these lies, thinking that people were believing him. Don't give them that satisfaction. Protect yourself. So there's my soapbox on that. I'm sorry if that sounded harsh, but it's serious. It's serious. Your life is serious. Take it seriously. Have fun, but be safe. That is all I have to say about that. But either way, that is where I'm going to end today's video. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say, or if you have any ideas on more ways to be able to go out and protect yourself while doing so, even better, leave those in the comments below. Either way, if you liked this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to go ahead and turn the notification bell to on so you don't miss any of my future videos. Don't forget to go ahead and follow my Twitter and Instagram. Both will be linked down below. And if you have absolutely any case suggestions, please make sure to go ahead and send those suggestions over to RachelShannonCases@gmail.com. With that, I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, protect yourselves, and have a great week. Bye!